Joining me now is California Congresswoman Sarah Jacobs. She is on the Foreign Affairs and Armed Services Committees. Hi, thank you so much for coming on, Congresswoman. Are you satisfied that any real progress was made during the president's call with Vladimir Putin? As we heard from officials, nothing has changed on the ground, and they said that it didn't change the dynamic at all.
I think that President Biden is taking exactly the right approach and doubling down on what we need to do, which is making sure that Vladimir Putin understands the severe consequences if he decides to invade, while also offering a diplomatic off-ramp and trying to de-escalate the situation so that it doesn't come to that.
Do you think that your colleagues will reach a compromise in time to deter a potential invasion? Because we keep hearing about these severe costs, but right now, the Senate is at an impasse.
Well, first of all, I think it's important to note that almost all of the sanctions being discussed, most legal scholars believe the administration has the authorities they need, sans action from Congress. This would really be about a show of unity and a show from Congress that this is the approach that the entire United States is united behind. I am confident we'll be able to get to an agreement. One of the sticking points is whether or not we should have preemptive sanctions, which I think is exactly the wrong approach. And I think might be a little bit moot by the time we come back and vote on this.
Why do you think that's a wrong approach?
Well, in a time like this, what we want is for Vladimir Putin to calculate that it is not in his interest to do the invasion. If we do preemptive sanctions, he will likely conclude that he has nothing left to lose. Sanctions take a long time to impose, and they also take a long time to unwind. And so he might feel like he's already bearing the costs, and both, therefore, for his own calculations and for his domestic politics, he has to also get the win of going and invading Ukraine versus what we can do right now, which is make sure he understands that that will be a cost if he invades, a real cost, but also offering a diplomatic off-ramp and trying to make sure we can get to a solution that doesn't involve that invasion.
Yesterday, U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan warned that a Russian attack on Ukraine could happen at any time. Today, the Ukrainian president said this about the constant warnings of an imminent Russian invasion.
The best friend for enemies, that is panic in our country. And all this information that helps only for panic doesn't help us.
So what do you think? Do you feel that the U.S. is making things worse with publicly putting out its dire view of the situation?
I was in Ukraine a couple weeks ago. I met with President Zelensky. I can tell you that our intelligence is all the same, that they are very aware of the real threat that Russia poses and the buildup that's occurring. President Zelensky is very concerned that Vladimir Putin won't even need to invade because he'll be able to get so much fear that their economy, the Ukrainian economy, will collapse. And so that's what President Zelensky is responding to. I think the other important thing to note here is that when I talk to Ukrainians, they'll tell me that while the West is newly attuned to this, they feel like they've been at war with Russia since 2014, since the invasion of Crimea and Donetsk. And so for them, part of the way they stand up to Vladimir Putin is being resilient and showing that they can still go on with their daily lives, that they can still live a life of freedom and democracy, even with that looming threat from Putin.
Given the fact that you were there in Ukraine talking to officials, do you think that publicly the Ukrainian officials are trying to act calm about everything and saying everything's going to be okay, we're still open for business and so forth, but really behind the scenes they're more anxious about a possible Russian invasion than they're letting on publicly just because they're worried about what all of this could do to its economy?
I think that's exactly right, and I'm confident that they are doing the planning that needs to be done so that they will be ready if an invasion happens.
I want to ask you about the fact that you represent the San Diego area, which has more than 100,000 active troops. Do you support President Biden's decision to deploy U.S. troops to Europe?
As the representative of a proud military community, you can appreciate that this is a question that is really top of mind for me and that I hear from my constituents constantly. First of all, I think it's important to say that President Biden has been very clear and I think has made the right call that we will not be sending American troops to Ukraine. That is not something that's on the table. But I do think it is important to show that our commitment to our NATO allies, especially our NATO allies in the East, is ironclad, and that's what sending these additional deployments of troops is meant to do.
All right, Congresswoman Sarah Jacobs.